Have you ever noticed that the most respected men are rarely the ones who speak the loudest? There's a type of man who doesn't need to raise his voice, prove himself, or seek attention. He simply is. And behind that calm and steady presence is an ancient philosophy called Stoicism, a code of conduct that shaped leaders like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, and still molds the strongest men today, often in silence. But what exactly makes a man like this stand out? The secret isn't in fancy words, it's in the things he refuses to do in front of others. In this video, you'll discover 4 behaviors that a Stoic man never allows himself. Not under pressure, not in front of a crowd, not even when no one's watching. And the reason behind this might be the dividing line between living for approval and being naturally respected. So get ready, because what you're about to learn may go against everything you've been told about strength, respect, and success. And if you stick with me until the end, you'll see exactly how to apply these ideas to your own life. Even if right now you still feel reactive, anxious, or insecure. Just a heads up. This isn't for those who want to look wise. It's for those who are ready to become unshakable from the inside out. Let's dive in. A Stoic man knows that reacting in the heat of the moment is like handing over the keys to your own mind, to chaos. He understands that every time he explodes, shouts, or loses control, he's not showing strength, but emotional weakness. Mastery of the mind begins with silence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And this is exactly the principle the Stoic man follows when he stays calm in the face of criticism, insults, or injustice. Instead of striking back or lashing out in anger, he retreats within. He observes. He evaluates. That's the power of perception, turning stimulus into pause and pause into wisdom. This doesn't mean being passive, quite the opposite. It means having the mental strength to act at the right moment. Instead of yelling in an argument, he calmly says, "Let's talk when we're both calmer." That's the essence of emotional control. Stoic philosophy teaches that anger is a fire that first burns the one who holds it. That's why a Stoic man trains his self-discipline daily. He meditates, journals, and practices emotional detachment. When anger starts to rise, he asks himself, "Is this really worth my energy?" Most of the time, the answer is no, and that silent no is what earns him respect, not from fear, but from internal coherence. He doesn't get shaken by every gust of wind. He's the mountain. Want a practical tip? Start small. Next time someone annoys you, count to 10, breathe, and ask yourself, what would be the wisest move here? It might sound basic, but it's a pillar of self-improvement. Great teachers like Seneca and Epictetus trained their minds like a warrior trains his body. It's not easy, but it's possible. And the more you train, the more inner peace you gain. The Stoic understands his mind is the only territory he truly controls. That's where he builds his temple. When someone screams at him in public, he doesn't scream back. When provoked online, he doesn't retaliate with insults. He has learned that ignoring negativity is also a display of power. A man who reacts less thinks more, and a man who thinks more makes better choices. That's the foundation of stress management and true emotional intelligence. He isn't some emotionless robot. He feels everything, but decides what to do with each emotion. He's like a general surveying the battlefield before commanding his troops. Nothing in him is by accident. Every gesture comes from a trained mind and a soul fortified by ancient wisdom. And if you think that's rare nowadays, wait until you see what else this kind of man never does, especially when it comes to showing off. A Stoic man has learned through ancient wisdom that true worth doesn't shout. It whispers through actions. In a world where many live to show off, he lives to be. He doesn't need to post every achievement, flaunt his progress, or seek applause, because he understands that craving external validation is like building a house on sinking sand. It might stand for a while, but it's bound to collapse. Stoic philosophy taught him to build inward, where no one sees, but everything matters. While others loudly proclaim their victories, he chooses the silence of consistency. He knows that bragging reveals more vanity than value. Seneca once said, "He who brags is still a slave to the opinion of others." That's why the Stoic man lets his actions speak for themselves. A good example? Think of someone who gets promoted but continues to treat everyone with the same respect. That's solid virtue in action, not getting drunk on success. He understands that showing off is an ego trap, and the ego is the biggest saboteur of personal growth. By bragging, one shifts focus from evolving to merely being admired. The Stoic, instead, stays grounded in self-discipline. He prefers to keep learning, reading books like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and sharpening his inner life while others are still busy comparing themselves. That's what personal development looks like. Living to impress others is like chasing the wind. The Stoic man has learned to ignore the applause and focus on the process. He'd rather be quietly excellent than loudly average. And when others try to provoke him with, "Why don't you show off more?" he simply smiles, because he knows real value doesn't need a spotlight. As Epictetus said, "Don't talk about being a philosopher, be one." In practice, this means he shares knowledge, not medals. He inspires but never imposes. He offers guidance but doesn't place himself on a pedestal. When praised, he thanks with humility. When ignored, he doesn't take offense. His focus isn't on how others react. It's on how consistent he remains with his own values. And that makes him not only admirable, but deeply trustworthy. Yes, he's proud, but proud of conquering himself every single day. He has nothing to prove to anyone because he's already earned his own respect. And when others see that, they naturally start to listen. But don't think he climbs on that pedestal just to look down on others. In fact, he never uses anyone as a stepping stone. The Stoic man knows that belittling someone else will never make him any greater. He has realized that those who need to step on others to feel tall are actually crawling inside. Stoic philosophy teaches that real worth needs no comparison. It simply is. That's why the Stoic chooses to be firm without cruelty, strong without arrogance. He understands that every human being carries unseen battles, and respect isn't just a behavior, it's an internal decision. Epictetus was clear. Don't say you are better than others, just be better, quietly. That principle is carved into the Stoic man's daily conduct. He doesn't mock co-workers, ridicule strangers, or correct others just to show he knows more. Because deep down he knows those who humiliate others reveal more about their own insecurity. Instead, he encourages rather than embarrasses, and that shows his emotional intelligence more than any speech ever could. Think about a family lunch, where someone says something wrong or off track. The Stoic man doesn't feel the need to correct them just to shine. He knows that keeping the peace is more valuable than proving a point. When someone expresses a different opinion, he listens attentively, not because he agrees, but because he respects. That ability to avoid superiority is the true reflection of his mental strength. Tearing others down is a sign of insecurity, not greatness. The Stoic man has already moved past that phase. He's realized that maturity lies in extending a hand when he could point a finger, in smiling instead of mocking, in staying silent instead of humiliating. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. Ancient wisdom that most have forgotten, but which still holds the power to reshape the life of anyone willing to practice it. In everyday life, his posture teaches more than his words. He inspires without showing off, leads without belittling. When he leads a team, he doesn't raise his voice, and he raises people. When praised, he shares credit, and when he makes mistakes, he owns them with humility. Because he knows the true power of the mind is not needing victory at the expense of others. That's what makes him stand out in a world bloated with ego. This kind of conduct naturally draws admiration. People trust him not because he demands it, but because he earns it. He doesn't need to push others down because he knows exactly where he stands. And when you know where you stand, you walk with confidence and lightness. But there's something even deeper at play here. Something that involves the freedom to be yourself, without the need to please the crowd. A Stoic man is not a hostage to public opinion. He knows that trying to please everyone is the fastest way to betray yourself. Stoic philosophy taught him that living by the views of others is like sailing without a compass. You might move, but you'll never know where you're going. Marcus Aurelius said, "We are to be good, not to seem good." That's why the Stoic man would rather be misunderstood for standing by his principles than loved for pretending. He doesn't change his tone depending on who's watching. He doesn't adjust his opinions just to fit in. When faced with rejection or judgment, he leans on his inner compass, virtue. That's where his decisions are born, even if it means upsetting people. Not because he's stubborn, but because he knows that coherence has more value than applause. To him, life is simple. Either you're firm or you're manipulable. He chose firmness. In practice, this shows up in small yet powerful actions. He declines invitations that go against his values, even when there's pressure to conform. He refuses to take part in gossip or negativity, no matter how normal it might seem. When everyone laughs at something cruel, he stays silent. Not out of fear, but because he won't trade inner peace for fleeting laughs. That's resilience training in real life. He doesn't feel the need to explain himself all the time. The Stoic man knows that true freedom begins when you stop depending on external validation. He'd rather be loyal to his conscience than loved for a mask. That takes courage and daily practice. He reflects often, journals his thoughts and asks himself, did I live according to my values today, or did I seek approval? These habits shape his character. You can start this same practice right now. Think about how many times you said yes when you wanted to say no. How often have you dressed, spoken, or acted just to fit in? The Stoic man breaks free from that. He trains mental mastery right there, in those tiny daily choices that define who you really are. He prefers to be respected for his integrity than loved for being fake, and that gives him strength and serenity. That kind of self-respect can't be bought. It must be earned. People trust him not because he tries hard to be liked, but because he's consistent. He's not guided by trends or convenience, and even if that bothers some people, it attracts those with vision. After all, someone who lives truthfully doesn't need applause to keep going. And when responsibility calls, this is the kind of man who rises to the moment. To a Stoic man, responsibility isn't a burden, it's an honor. He knows that running from the consequences of his actions is the same as abandoning his character. Stoic philosophy taught him that owning your mistakes builds you far more than pretending to be flawless. When something goes wrong, he doesn't look for who to blame. He looks for what to solve. And if he is at fault, he admits it. Because true mental strength says, yes, it was me, and now I'll make it right. The Stoic doesn't outsource decisions. He doesn't wait for others to clean up what is his. If a project fails, he examines what was missing. If a relationship cracks, he reflects on his role in it. That's the mark of mind mastery, the courage to look in the mirror with no excuses. While others stay stuck in "it was because of them," the Stoic lives in "what can I learn from this?" That shift turns setbacks into growth for personal development. Want a practical example? Think of someone who always blames traffic for being late. The Stoic, on the other hand, reviews his schedule, adjusts his habits, and takes responsibility to leave earlier. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Because responsibility is also this: stepping out of automatic reactions and stepping into emotional control. It's not about carrying the world on your shoulders. It's about carrying your share with honor. This man isn't afraid to say sorry when he's wrong. He knows that admitting a mistake doesn't shrink his worth. It proves his integrity. He understands that real leadership begins with leading yourself. As Seneca said, the greatest power is to rule yourself. That's why he owns his life. If something needs to be done, he does it. If something needs to be said, he says it. No victimhood, no drama, just maturity. That posture shapes every environment he's in. At work, he's reliable. In the family, he's an example. Among friends, he's the one everyone can count on. Because the Stoic man doesn't run, he steps forward. And for that, even in silence, his presence carries weight. Not because he's loud, but because he quietly carries what others avoid. That alone is inspiring. He knows that owning your actions is like growing deep roots. Even when the storm hits, he stands tall. He doesn't chase excuses, he seeks firmness. He doesn't wait for life to be fair before being fair himself. And that's why, when everyone else backs down, he steps up. But behind that boldness is something even more sacred: his loyalty to his own principles. A Stoic man might lose opportunities, but never himself. He understands that his principles aren't decorations, they're foundations. That's why no matter the pressure, the temptation, or the silence of others, he stands firm. As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul becomes invincible when it aligns with reason and virtue. That kind of strength is forged daily in quiet decisions that most people never see, but define everything. This man doesn't need witnesses to act with integrity. Even when no one is watching, he does what's right, because he knows that the respect he receives from others reflects the respect he has for himself. He turns down bribes even if no one would ever find out. He doesn't lie to look better. He doesn't betray just to ease a desire. To him, going against his principles is abandoning his soul, and that's a price he'll never pay. Want a real-life example? Imagine someone losing a promotion because he refused to lie on a report. Most would call that naive. The Stoic calls it honor, because he doesn't measure success by a title, but by how clean his conscience is. He'd rather build slow and steady with truth than rise fast with lies. That takes self-discipline, mental strength, and deep commitment to personal development. He knows that every small compromise creates cracks in his internal fortress, and that giving in once can make it easier to give in again. So he draws his lines and keeps them, even if that means losing friends, breaking deals, or changing paths, because peace of mind has no price. His philosophy of life is simple. Either you stay loyal to yourself, or you become a slave to your surroundings. He chooses freedom. That doesn't mean he doesn't feel tempted. It means he refuses to be ruled by temptation. He feels desire, but he doesn't act on impulse. He hears the urge, but chooses reason. That ability to remain firm in chaos is what truly impresses. He doesn't need to claim character. He lives it. And even those who disagree with him respect him. That respect doesn't come from fear, but from predictability. People know what to expect from him. They know he won't bend for convenience, but stand for conviction. They know that when faced with injustice, he won't stay quiet, even if it costs him. And that consistency is magnetic. It proves that values still matter. And those who walk with values may walk a narrower road, but always with their head high and conscience clear. Now that you've learned the 4 things a Stoic man never does in front of others, pause and reflect. Which of these are still showing up in your life? Are you still reacting impulsively, chasing approval, ignoring your values? The truth is, the world doesn't need more people shouting, showing off, or pointing fingers. It needs men who are steady, composed, and conscious, like a rock in the middle of a storm. So I ask you, what are you going to do with this wisdom you've just received? Will you let it stay as theory, or will you start right now to train your self-control, strengthen your mind, and cultivate inner peace? Because knowing is not enough. Applying it is what changes everything. And you don't have to be perfect, just take one step. Master your next reaction. Practice self-discipline. Do it daily, and you'll watch yourself become that higher version of who you were meant to be. If this video made you think, touched you, or challenged you, drop a comment below. Tell me, which of these 4 behaviors do you most need to eliminate from your life? And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. Turn on notifications and hit the like button. Here you'll learn how to use stoicism and ancient wisdom to win from within and live a life of true power and presence. This journey doesn't end here. It's just beginning.